Good evening, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It's Sunday evening, which, of course, as you know by now, means match day review showtime. And it's back-to-back 1-0 wins from Mark Bonner's side. The tide is starting to turn slowly but surely. That made it 3 wins in 5 now. A very impressive 1-0 win against MK Dons. Was the performance perfect? Absolutely not. Did we ride our luck at times? Yes, we did. But we earned that luck, I believe, and we got a big helping hand from the home keeper. And I'm pleased to say, despite no Reece this weekend, because he is now coming to England for the festive period, so we will see him at the Cheltenham game coming Friday. I am joined once again by friend of the channel, huge supporter of the channel as well, so please give this man a follow. It's Jonathan Harries. His details are in the description at the bottom of the video. As always, he is, of course, a huge MK Dons fan. Jonathan, appreciate you coming to join me because, like I say to, well, myself quite a lot, and any side, a fan of a side that's come on after a defeat, it's not nice to come back and talk about a loss. So I do appreciate your time and thank you very much.
No worries, Matt. Hope everyone's all right. And the run was always going to come to an end at some point, and just a shame we didn't quite have the end product yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to sum it up. If we go back to 2 o'clock, first of all, team news comes out at that time. You lined up in a familiar shape, a 3-4-2-1 or a variation of it. I mean, it's very fluid, that system, the way you play anyway. So it was McGill in goal. It was a back three of Offord, Lawrence and Maguire. The quartet in front was then the main on the right, Pritchard on the left, Kelly and White in the middle. And then it was Wern and Gilby supporting Scott Hogan. For the Gills, back to the 4-2-3-1 after a 4-4-2 last weekend at home, which I thought was sensible. It was Glenn Morris in goal, a back four of Harry Webster, Max Emer, Connor Masterson and Max Clark, a midfield pivot of Ethan Coleman and Robbie McKenzie, and then it was Aaron Rowe back in the side for the first time since August, Jack Nolan and top scorer Jaden Clark supporting Elliot Nevitt. Jonathan, I've written down a paragraph and I've put the game panned out the way that many thought it would. MK boss in possession with the Gills having to remain resolute in their shape and having to take their chances if and when they came along.
Yep, that you've hit the nail on the head there. I think we started the game as I thought we would, and it was really sort of positive from us. Obviously, we had no changes from the Chesterfield game, which I was expecting. There was only, I think, one change on the bench. I think Sam Sherring came on, and I thought that was maybe an extra sort of defensive sort of person. Say if we were winning late on, stick him on and sort of defend against you. But yeah, the game started and it panned out the way I expected especially the first 15-20 minutes.
Yeah, I've written down here that after about 10 minutes, we looked at each other, myself and Nick, in the ground and said, this is going to be one hell of a long afternoon. I think the ball was basically being played in our third. I think Aaron the main got the beating of Max Clark and Aaron Rowe, I think, for pace a couple of times. And there was that very early chance where he got the ball back to Scott Hogan. Luckily, from our point of view, Hogan didn't have a good first touch and the ball sort of just looped up to Glenn Morris. So it was more of a gather than a save in the end. At the time, we weren't really sure what had happened because obviously it was down the other end of the pitch. But yeah, I just thought, and we spoke about Aaron the main on the preview with like 6-7 assists this season, has come out of the shadows of Jody Jones, we said, since moving to Stadium MK, and has been very, very good. Loads of end product. But he was just, from our point of view, I mean, it was great for you. He was just getting in behind too easily. He was getting to the byline too frequently. That chance for Hogan came from him doing that. And yeah, I just thought at that point, like I say, it was going to be a long afternoon. And as you've said, you would have been super happy with the positive start and the intent shown from your side.
Absolutely. I thought, especially sort of Liam Kelly and Joe White were pinging the ball about really nicely. I think Joe White was being really positive on the ball. As you say, all the attacks seemed to go down the main side. And I know a lot of Gillingham fans post-match last night were saying that Max Clark didn't have a good start to the game, and they felt that it was going to be a sort of long day against the main. I'd have liked to, like I said to you last night, I'd have liked us to attack your right-hand side a bit more, because I felt that the young lad was a bit, he seemed a little bit sort of hesitant at times, and I don't think we took full advantage of that. I'm sure we'll go on to that a bit later on, but yeah, I think the ball just bounced just before Hogan took that chance. It didn't sit right, and I think it looked harder than it looked, just because of that bounce. And I think Hogan was good. He didn't finish that off as well because it was a really good move down the right hand side.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, really, really good. Like I say, it was. You moved the ball quickly. You got in behind, created the chance, and at that point, I thought, yeah, we're just going to have to be very, very carefully. Just touching on our right back, Harry Webster made his league debut last Saturday. Was very, very good. Came off to a standing ovation after 89 minutes. I think they maybe had targeted him a little bit more, but I think they went down that side early on, didn't they, MK? And I think Gilby tried to beat him and he got back in and made a really good tackle. I know there were shouts from your end for a penalty or a free kick. Again, we were miles away, but maybe that just sort of not put you off. But I'd imagine you look at the team and you go, oh, there's an 18-year-old, it's only his second league start. He's going to be nervous. It's a big ground. But I think that helped him out. Obviously, we'll talk about him in a little bit more detail because one of your best chances came through Harry Webster. But after that initial period, Jonathan, I want to ask you, I thought we adjusted quite well. I thought Max Clark was clever in just dropping off 5 yards. And he said, right, Aaron the main can have the ball, but I'm going to make sure he's in front of me now. I'm going to cut off the space behind. I'm not going to let him get to the byline. So if he wants to deliver, he can try and get the ball into Gilby and Hogan. They're probably your main targets aerially if you're delivering from that side or the other side. And then it's up to our centre backs, who I'd back, and our keeper to come out and claim it or head it and clear it. And I thought we adjusted fairly well to doing that because, like you say, after 10 minutes, it looked like Max Clark was going to be absolutely torn a new one.
Absolutely, and I've got to say fair play to Aaron Rowe as well because I never thought sort of defensively he was that strong, but as the game went on, I thought Aaron Rowe did really well, and they really doubled up. In fact, I think there were times there were 3 men on Aaron the main at times, especially second half, and you could see Aaron was getting frustrated, and he was trying things he doesn't normally try, trying to take on 2 or 3 players at a time. And I was thinking, wow, they've actually Bonner's had a game plan, and you can see they worked on it. And I said to a lot of Gillingham fans last night that I thought Max Clark was your man of the match. To be fair, because just the way I've never seen the main that quiet, probably since Mike Williamson left. To be honest, so fair play to Max Clark for that.
Yeah, I mean, I went for someone slightly different, and we'll talk about it now. I went with Connor Masterson. I thought Connor Masterson was immense at centre half yesterday. I think, again, everything that came into the box, he headed it, he blocked shots. He was brave when he had the chance to get out with the ball and trying to create an overload because we didn't see a lot of the football. We know that. We was never going to. But yeah, Max Clark, I thought, just got better and better as the game went on as well. I think it's fair to say we didn't offer much of a threat first half at all. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend, but I think if we'd gone there and tried to out MK Dons, we'd have got thrashed. Like, if we go there and we try and play out from the back and keep it all day long, we're not that type of side. We've got Elliot Nevitt up there for a reason. We can turn you round, or we can go from back to front quite quickly to give ourselves a breather defensively as well, which I think you have to do when you play a side like MK Dons because it just becomes relentless. And I think there almost becomes a case that MK Dons know that they'll go backwards and square a lot, and they'll go inside and out, and they'll keep repeating triangles and doing the same things. But what you have to do as a defensive side, I think, and you can agree or disagree, you have to remain switched on, because I think if you play against a team like that, even if they're not getting through, I think eventually teams will cave and switch off, and that's when you get in behind, and that's when your chance comes. I thought Gillingham were brilliant in not switching off. Like I've already said, we had a bit of luck a couple of times, big slices of luck in terms of defensive stuff and the winner, which we'll get to. But I thought we were really good. But yeah, I think aside from Jack Nolan's snapshot that went over the bar first half, we didn't offer anything in an attacking sense. Your best chance, though, I thought, for all your possession, came through an error from Harry Webster, where he just took slightly too long on the ball. You can see what he's trying to do. He's had a look down the line, he's gone no, and then he's tried to go back to Glenn Morris, but he's overstretched. It's a good save from Morris, but I think Scott Lindsay's alluded to it in his post-match. I've only watched a little clip, and says if you're one-on-one, you have to score the goal. Is
Absolutely.
Scott being overcritical of Joe Pritchard, or do we give more credit to Glenn Morris for staying as big as he can and late as possible and making Joe make the decision?
Well, when I saw it live, I instantly said to the guy that I sit next to, I said, if that was Joe Tomlinson, it would have been a goal or an assist. And that's not a slight on Pritchard, because with Tomlinson, he's good on both feet, whereas Pritchard predominantly cuts inside, so he had to adjust to get his shot away. And it was frustrating because it was like our clearest chance of the game. And you say it was Webster's probably only big mistake, and you got to credit Morris because he did come out and possibly he could have squared it for Hogan. I'm not too sure. I think Aimer would have got there, or Masterson would have got there from the angle that I was at. But certainly, I agree with Lindsay. It should have been scored. And as I said, if that was Joe Tomlinson, he probably would have buried it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the benefit of having Joe Tomlinson. He's naturally left-footed, so he can go for that shot into that far corner, or the natural angle is to square it for a striker in the 6-yard box, whereas, like you say, Pritchard's almost got to stop and come back on himself a little bit, which then maybe the angle gets narrowed. Like you say, Amar or Masterson get in and are able to mark Scott Hogan. But it was certainly a let-off for the Gills. I think shortly after the half-time whistle went. I want to ask you, there were some Gills fans that booed our performance first half. Now, I just wanted to ask, as an opposition fan, what you potentially thought of that and what you thought of our performance first. Bearing in mind who we're playing and the form that they're in.
I mean, I do get it. Maybe your fans were expecting a bit more attacking, but as you said, if you go gun ho against us, we're just going to pick you off and score. I think Mark Bonner probably had the game plan to do that, keep it tight first half, and you were successful. And as you say, you were organised, you were resolute. It was weird because most teams this season have pressed our centre backs, whereas you were happy to let Offord and Maguire and Lawrence have the ball a lot, and even come up to the halfway line and then press from the halfway line, which I thought was a good ploy in the end. And I honestly didn't hear the boos from where I was, so I don't know if it was a minority of Gills fans that booed or
Oh, 100%,
what.
it was a minority, but so obviously if you've not heard it, that's fair enough. But you make a point there. That's what, and I thought we were really good in just letting you have the ball in non-dangerous areas. If we go and press as a 3 on your 3 centre backs and you pass through us, suddenly we've got 3 people out of the game, and then you're playing into our third very quickly with an overload in probably 1 or 2 areas. I thought we picked and chose our moments to press really, really well. It's not going to work all the time, 100%, because MK Dons are a good side at the end of the day, and that's why they won 6 on the bounce and scored 24 before yesterday. I just thought, I don't know, maybe I just thought people weren't reading the room in terms of where we were, and we've not been in the best form ourselves. Because if you go there and press early and you try and outplay MK Dons, you can be 2-0 down in 15 minutes and the game's then done. But I get we all see it differently. I just wanted to ask you as an MK Dons fan what you thought of our display first half. So, but it is what it is. Second half started. I think the pattern of play was re-established really quickly. MK Dons were going to be the ones, probing and pressing and dictating the tempo. You had sort of 2 half chances in the early period of that second half. I think Scott Hogan did well to outmuscle. I think it was Ethan Coleman, but angle was against him. He didn't have any support. He hit the side net in. I think it was it White had a shot that just flashed over, which was a really good effort.
Yeah.
I think Morris at first thought it was going higher than it actually was, and then made a sort of bit of a scramble to get there, and luckily saw it go over the bar. But again, I thought they're not chances like the one that Nemain had fashioned early on, where he's got to the byline and he's picked out a player sort of 6 yards out. They were half chances and openings rather than clear-cut opportunities.
Yeah, I agree, and that second half was so frustrating. And Lindsay alluded to it post match. He was like, we just second half in particular, we just. I don't think apart from right at the end, I think Glenn Morris's gloves would have been nice and clean at the end of the game, because quite honestly, throughout the game, he maybe made two saves, and that was a very un-MK Dons performance in the sense of we were getting in the positions, but we weren't like shooting. And there was a time in the first half where Stephen Byrne got some space, sort of like in the inside 10 role, and ran at a defence. And because of his confidence, he didn't take the shot. He took an extra touch and allowed your defender to get back. And little things like that just weren't paying off. I don't think Alex Gilby was at his best yesterday either. He was a bit hesitant. He seemed a bit sort of bit of moody. He was having a go at Joe Pritchard a lot, especially that first half, regarding pressing, and it just didn't quite. I'm not making excuses, because at the end of the day, Gillingham won and they deserved to. They got their chance and they scored. But I just feel we could have, especially second half, we could have done more than we did.
Yeah, I don't know what you thought, but I thought certainly after that, them 2 half chances came and went. It was almost like a switch was flicked, and we suddenly thought, you know what, we might be able to I'm not saying we thought, oh, we can go on and win this. Like, we were still having to work hard and you were still having the majority of the game. But there suddenly seems like, and we thought, hang about, like, there's an hour gone here. They've done all they can and they've not scored a goal. But suddenly we thought, right, let's go and put pressure on them the other way. And I think there was a chance for Aaron Rowe. I think he drifted in from the left. Shot was blocked.
Yeah.
And then I think the follow-up came back to Jack Nolan, and Credit McGill made a really good save. He got down with his left hand and scooped it out for a corner. Unfortunately, it led to what he then did shortly after. But yeah, that's where the goal comes from. And it was suddenly was that little extra bit of belief. Because we said during the first half, it was all right. Like your centre-halves, just to go back to them, it's all nice and the keeper, and they're passing it amongst themselves. They're playing into midfield, and they're playing out to the wing-backs when you're not got any pressure on. But there was a couple of times, I think it was... who was your middle centre half? Sorry.
Lawrence was out.
Lawrence, yeah, Nico Lawrence. There was a couple of times where, under very little pressure, he shanked clearances. I think one went out for a corner, one went out for a throw-in. And we were just sort of thinking, if we just get at them a little bit here, they might. Because, I don't know what you think, Jonathan, but a side who has that much ball and generally wins a lot of football matches fairly comfortably, you won a lot of games 3-1 in the recent few weeks. So I'm guessing you don't do so much defending. So then when you are put under pressure for any type of period, it's a sort of, not a guessing game, but how you're going to react to it, because it's not something that happens to you defensively that regularly.
Absolutely. And again, Scott Lindsay alluded to it post match. He says you've got to be concentrated in both boxes. And he was, I'm sure we'll get onto it, but he was so critical of the goal. Not only the goalkeeper, like defensively, he said we shouldn't have conceded the corner. I think he was alluding to not pressing Nolan enough for the shot, and even moaned about the second phase. Said we dealt with the first phase okay, but then we just didn't deal with the second phase. And he mentioned concentration several times in the post match. And to be fair, he gave credit to Gillingham. He did say good luck to you and well done and things like that. But we've never been the greatest defensively since I've followed MK Dons. Maybe when Carl McFadden was there, like early on, but we've never been known as a defensive side. We've always been known as a you score two, we'll score three sort of side. Mm-hmm. And it's something that we can work on, obviously, but I do think that we've got probably the three best centre backs, or one team that's got the best set of centre backs like in the league. You think we've still got Sam Sherrin, we've still got Jack Tucker, we've obviously got the three there, we've got Dean Lewington as well. So we're well stacked. It's just a matter of keeping the clean sheets, which could be the difference between automatic or playoffs should we get there.
Yeah, and I guess obviously you score the first goal majority of games, so that means then that teams have to be open and you can pick them off, which you do really well. So it's then a case of just when plan A doesn't work, because, and that's what we spoke about during the game, that then you have to just find different ways. And I know Scott alluded in his press conference and said, oh, people were expecting us last 15 minutes to go a bit more direct and a bit longer with the ball. And he said, no, we don't. We just have to be better and do what we're doing quicker and better and make better decisions. But I personally, and the people around me, thought that it all became a little bit predictable at 1-0. You kept doing the same things. Your centre-halves go into Kelly. Kelly then goes to the wing-back, or Kelly then goes to Vern or to Gilby. What I noticed predominantly second half was that Nemain, and I know you've mentioned he was doubled up on a little bit, but I can't remember him trying to beat Max Clark on the outside. He kept coming in, like you say. You've mentioned he tried to beat multiple players, but he kept stepping in to where the traffic was. And then when that didn't work, I think he just played it back to Kelly. And again, Kelly then plays that floated ball back post. And we've got, by that point, we've got Shad Ogie on the pitch as well. We've got Max Emer and Connor Masterson winning everything in the air. And you're almost expecting Scott Hogan to battle with three monstrous centre-halves and a keeper. And I thought you played into our hands fairly easily in that last period of the football match.
Absolutely. I mean, we brought Ellis Harrison and Callum Hendry on. I thought Hendry was quite anonymous, to be honest. I think he might. I don't know if he picked up a slight injury when he came on. I thought Harrison again. I thought both your defenders dealt with Harrison absolutely superbly because
If one half chance, didn't he? I think a header that he didn't really make a proper contact with, if I remember rightly, Harrison.
yeah, and we always say Harrison's like the difference maker. If it's a tight game like that, he's done it against Accrington, he's done it against Cheltenham, where he just comes on and just causes a nuisance and really sort of upsets like defenders with his physical presence. But I thought you dealt with it really well. I thought you dealt with it really well when we brought Tom Carroll on, because then I thought, right, there's someone to unpick the lock, but he was really struggling to find a forward pass a lot, and I just think that's down to how well organised and how well structured Gillingham were during the game. And say, got to give credit to Mark Bonner, because he did that a lot when with his Cambridge side when we played each other. It was never a case of matching you up. It was a case of defend and then just take advantage of any situations you have. So yeah, obviously Mark Bonner's got our number.
Hopefully for the return fixture as well. But yeah, we've gone off on a bit of a tangent. But in terms of the goal you've mentioned, Scott wasn't happy with the lack of press on Jack Nolan, which allows the shot, which brings the save, which then brings the corner. I think it's either McGill sort of gets a bit of a punch on the corner or a header, and it goes out to the left-hand side for our winner. I thought Aaron Rowe did really well. He feints to go on the outside, drops the shoulder. I think he picks Robbie McKenzie out. So, and then Robbie McKenzie does what he needs to do. He shifts his weight to create that half a yard, but he doesn't catch it at all, does he? We caught the clip of it on the Matchday Live, and you can hear it. The shot goes, and everyone's like, "Oh," and then it's like, "Oh," and then there's the big cheer because McGill's just had a brain fart, hasn't he? Unfortunately, from your point of view, we said when we was talking about it on the coach on the way home, it's almost like because of the way you play. So make the save, get moving quickly, give it to a centre half, then he can get it to the wing back, and we'll start moving the game. It was almost like he was in his head, he was picking the ball up and finding that option before he'd actually stopped the football. And then it's if a double nutmeg is a thing, it goes between his hands and then between his legs, and it's the softest of winners. But I mean, we'll absolutely take it. And I noticed you tweeted last night and said, look, it's his first mistake of the season. And it's unavoidable, isn't it, with goalkeepers? They make a mistake 99 times out of 100. It unfortunately leads to a goal, whereas striker misses a sitter, he gets another one later in the game. But that's the bit of luck you need when you've probably defended that resolutely for 60 minutes and then another half hour or more afterwards.
Absolutely. And as I say, we're, 17, 18 games in, and that's McGill's first mistake for a goal. And I was sort of a bit wary going on social media last night, because I hate to say it, but our fan base is so, when it comes to goalkeepers making mistakes, they can really go for him. They really went for Philip Marshall last season when he came in, and you look how he's doing at Crewe this season. Obviously, it was Marshall's first loan, and he came in January. So to me, a goalkeeper needs a pre-season with his defence to build sort of confidence and sort of things like that. And McGill is a good goalkeeper. Brighton don't sign bad goalkeepers. You've seen it yourself. They've got about 2 or 3 on loan in the EFL. There was that goalkeeper. Which one did Lincoln have again? I think was it Carl Rushworth. He had a real good season the other season as well. And you think that's his first mistake. He's only young. He's going to learn from it. I think he wanted the ground to swallow him up, because he was lying there for a good 30 or 40 seconds, like, oh no. And it took Luke Offord to come over and say, come on, just get your head together. And you could see it full time. He apologised to the fans, but there was no need to, because that was his first mistake. And it's a team game at the end of the day. So I'm sure if Reece was on, Reece would say, look, these things happen. So yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, we're missing him today, goalkeepers union and that type of thing. It means I can slag off the officials as well without him moaning at me, but I don't need to. So they're always better when you win football matches anyway. But yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? If you take your chances before that era, no one bats an eyelid. If you win 3-1 and he's let one through his legs, no one bats an eyelid. It's just the fact that the error's compounded because it turns out to be the winning goal. We made a couple of changes after the goal. I think Harry Webster was withdrawn, Ramo Hutton came on, which I thought was a good change. Webster was, like you say, looked a bit nervous at times, but that'll come with time and learning. So they brought the more experienced Ramo Hutton on. There was a couple of changes after that. Who else came on? I think Jaden Clark and Elliot Nevitt were withdrawn. They brought on Josh Andrews and
Bradley
Bradley Dack. Shadogi
Yeah.
had come on. Ewan Williams had come on. And it's interesting that point you made about Tom Carroll and saying that you got him on with the hope of him unlocking our defence and picking a pass and being able to play through the line centrally, potentially, rather than constantly going wide and doing what you was doing for the entirety of the game. But I think by that point, in fairness to Carroll, I think we'd gone to a 5-diamond 1, which then made that centre of the park really congested because we ended up with Hutton, Clark as the fullbacks, and then Ogie had obviously got in next to Masterson and Amar. We then had Coleman sat in front, Williams and McKenzie from the sides, and Dack at the point of that diamond. So, in fairness to Carroll, I'm not sure there was any space at all. That was probably the time when you should have gone wide.
Absolutely, and the frustrating thing for us is that maybe that was a game, and I did say this post match. Maybe that was a game for Joe Tomlinson. I mean, he was unlucky to pick up an injury, and we're not always going to have our best 11 throughout the season. But I just feel that, especially when we took Pritchard off, we lost all sort of like all of the width, like both sides. Obviously, the main was getting pocketed by Max Clark by that point, and we weren't really effective on the left, even though Lawrence Maguire was essentially playing as a left winger at times in the second half as well. And I just feel we didn't. I think the best way to explain it is we didn't, when at the start of the game, we didn't probably use Vernon and Gilby enough when they were dropping in the 10 position, and then when we were behind, we didn't use the width that you allowed us the space to get the balls in to Harrison, to a Hendry. We had the height and the physicality there, and I just don't feel we used it bar one moment right at the end. So, yeah, that's it really.
Yeah, it was almost like at some points we were just saying, right, you can have it wide and fling it into our box, and we're going to back ourselves to edit clear and not let you get a header at goal and that type of thing. And I'm guessing it's a little bit of a risk and reward type situation, but ultimately it ended up paying off if that was the case. In terms of chances, I think we'd had one just after the goal again. It was Rowe, played it into the feet of Nevitt, who rolled his centre half and shot over.
Yeah.
Your big chance come right at the end, and I've written down, I still don't know what happened. Where's it gone? Yeah, still not sure what happened, and I'm still even more unsure how it didn't end up in the back of our net. Because for the world, I thought this is going to be rolled in at 1-0. I think Morris sort of gets something on it. He's out of position. You then think Harrison, it might have been, was going to tap it in, or someone. And then there's just a big melee of players sort of just all falling over the football. And eventually we see it squirm out to the far side from where we're sitting, and we can all breathe a sigh of relief again. I'm guessing at that point you're thinking, I know there's not long left in the game. You're thinking, yes, definitely not going to be our day.
Absolutely. And I think Morris was credited with the save from what I've seen from your side of social media. Morris was credited with the first save, which fair play to him. He's had barely anything to do, as I've said. His gloves will be pretty clean from the game, and he's produced the one moment to keep you ahead. And it was a bit of a scramble, and as you say, once it was cleared, it was like, yeah, we're not getting anything out of this. We can huff and puff all we want, but we're not going to blow the Gillingham house down. And yeah, as frustrating as it was, as I keep saying, and I've said to plenty of Gillingham fans, they've said it themselves as well. They've said it. There was a lot of luck involved, but you earn your own luck, and you certainly did yesterday. So fair play.
Yeah, and shortly after the final whistle went, and it was a huge 3 points for us. Like, I mean, I came to MK Dons last season as well, as you know, and again, it was a similar pattern. It was a 0-0 at half time, and we said, right, if we can stay in the game for 15 minutes second half, but we conceded 2 quickly, and then had to chase it, got one back and hit the bar injury time, but wouldn't have deserved a point, if I remember correctly. I always like to have a little look at social media, and I always like to look at the replies to the opposition team's full-time tweet. And I had a look at MK Dons. It was a mixture of Gillingham are the worst team to come to the stadium this season, and which is fine. I get that. So that's social media banter and people letting off steam. The point that I was that I found more pertinent, I wanted to ask you about, and I think you've mentioned it already, was a few fans were saying that felt like a Mike Williamson type performance rather than a Scott Limsey type performance.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. I get it in the sense of we had a lot of the ball. I think we had like 70-odd% possession, whatever. But as you've said before, when you've played us, possession doesn't get you points. We had that goal in the COVID season, I think it
I
was.
was going to mention that. You beat me to
the
Was
50
that the
odd
one where you
passes.
tweeted it at half time, didn't you, about all the passes, and then we beat you 3-2?
Yeah, it was ridiculous, but yeah, it did feel a bit like a Mike Williamson performance. But for me, as Lindsay said, we just weren't clinical enough. And the difference between Lindsay and Williamson is Lindsay will sort it. I don't think Lindsay will be happy with the perform. He'll be happy with the way we controlled the game. He won't be happy with the lack of chances we created. And for me, um, we're going to be fine this season. For me, I think, but there's always going to be bumps in the road. We weren't going to go unbeaten all season, and it just so happened that you came to MK and you won. So it's a fair play.
That's it. There's a lot of football to be played. What, with 20 games in, give or take. Some have played 19, some have played 18 because of postponements and that type of thing. We're not even 50% of the way through, and certainly given your start that you had under Williamson, to be in the playoffs with a game in hand around, or one or two games in hand around some others, is a brilliant position to be in, despite the setback yesterday. But that's all it is. Like, I know I mentioned and said maybe there's a slight lack of plan B, but when your plan A is that good and that effective, I don't think it matters too much. And if you play like that 9 times out of 10, you win the football match.
Yeah,
I'm just glad that we were the 10th one and managed to nick the points. We've already sort of spoken about what you made of the Gills performance. You said we came with a plan, we executed it, so I don't want to touch on that too much again. I think just before we finish up, Jonathan, and it almost ties in with what you mentioned about that goal that you scored at the Priestfield a few years ago, is that for all your possession second half, I think you had 80% of the ball second half. You didn't actually have a shot on target registered. So that not puts it to bed, but I think sometimes, do we overanalyze possession? Because if I was a neutral and someone said, "Oh, look at this game," and you look at them stats, you go, "Oh, that home team's had 80% of the ball second half. They've had 75% first half. So they've had 77.5% over the whole game. Surely they won by miles." But football's more than that, isn't it? It's when you dig a bit deeper and you look at heat maps and where have you had all them passes. Because I think if we go back to that game again in the COVID season, you completed about 650 passes. But when it got broken down, I think about 400 of them were from your keeper and your centre halves. So that's in areas where you're not hurting opposition. And again, it works more than it doesn't work. So it's not a case of changing it, like after 6 wins on the bounce and 1 defeat. But it just, for me, because I spoke to Danny off of the One Up Top Salford City podcast last week, and we beat them 1-0. And he noticed that a lot of our games we win is when we've had less of the ball. It's when we have to have more of the ball, and potentially we're not quite cute enough at the moment to break teams down that come in and sit in and bank up against us. That's when we struggle a little bit more. But yeah, it just sort of made me smile that if you'd looked at it as a neutral and gone, "Oh, there's only one team that wins that," but that's the beauty of football, isn't it? That it's not always based on what you see and numbers. And I love stats, don't get me wrong. Like, I love looking at stats, but sometimes it's just the one stat that's the most important, and that's the goals for each team, isn't it?
absolutely. But then I'd also say, if you didn't look at the stats and you went there yesterday as a neutral and you just watched the game, you'd be like, yes, they've had all this possession, but what have they really done with it? And I think I think that I think with especially with our fans, they expect us to walk all over teams. They're expecting us to. Some of our fan base are expecting us to walk the league because you could say it's a weaker league than last season. There's no Wrexham, there's no Stockport, there's no Mansfield. But the thing about League Two is it's so unpredictable. You go beat Salford last week, they come this week and beat Notts County 3-0 at home. So you can't sort of go into a game thinking, yeah, we're going to win. It's only Gillingham. It's only Cheltenham. It's only whoever. You've got to be on it every single sort of game. And for me, as I said, I think we'll be fine. I think you'll be. I think you might sneak playoffs. I did say to a lot of Gillingham fans, I think if you can get Nevitt in form, if you can get Nolan and Rowe, sort of as you said, I think Rowe second half was superb, and if you can get those front three firing, or even a Josh Andrews or someone, I think you could sneak into the top 7. I think defensively, you're solid. Structurally, you're solid, and obviously you're probably not going to get as many goals as what we will, but I think you'll have enough to get into the top 7. And if I'd be nervous if we ever met you in the playoffs, put it that way, because I don't think it would be a walkover.
No, and you've got previous with the playoffs just a few months ago, haven't you? So, but we definitely wouldn't beat you 8-1 on aggregate. Absolutely not. That'd take us about 3 months to score 8 goals. But no, you're right, and it's similar with us. Like the teams that I mean, we've beaten top when we've played the games. We've beaten top of the league 3 times this season. We played Notts County; they were top. Barrow, they were top. Port Vale, they were top. We've beaten them all without conceding, and we've gone to. We've beaten Chesterfield; they're right up there. We've obviously gone to your place and beaten you. Notts County, like I say, they're all in the top half. It's the games where we've dropped silly points against Swindon and Accrington and Harrogate, Fleetwood. Now you'd say they're down the bottom. Lost at home to Newport. That's where we've got to be better, and that's my point earlier about when teams let us have the ball, we've got to be better with it at trying to open teams up and just for me, and I don't want to put pressure on him because he's barely played, but if we can get Bradley Dack fit for the second half of the season, I think he could be the difference, because I think he could then bring all them players that you've said alive, because he'll be the one player that can pick a pass at the level that someone else might not see. He might be able to release a Rowe or a Nolan for a cross to come in for a Nevitt or an Andrews. I think if we can get Bradley Dack playing in a lot of them games in the second half of the season, I think he could be the difference. But we've got to keep him fit.
Absolutely, and as you say, he could be the key for them games. So when you play the sides down the bottom that are going to be like you were yesterday, sitting back, and even he could produce a moment of magic himself. He's not afraid to shoot from outside the box, and again, that's something that I've been critical of MK Dons this season. We don't shoot outside the box unless it's literally presented to us on a plate on a silver platter. So if you've got a midfielder that can score goals from range, then again, that's another string to your bow.
Absolutely, but like we say, long way to go. Setback for MK Dons, a big result for the Gills. I think it's full time on this one, Jonathan. As always, an absolute pleasure, mate. Appreciate you coming on twice this week. I really, really do. Could sit here and talk all day, but unfortunately, I've got tasks to go and carry out. So, like I've said, everybody, as I always say, if you're watching at this point, whether you're a Gills fan, an MK Dons fan, or a neutral, thank you very much. Please consider hitting that like button. Please keep pressing subscribe. It is free and it helps me out a great deal. Like I've said as well, Jonathan's details are in the description at the bottom of this video. Go and give him a follow. Some brilliant stuff on there regarding MK Dons and just his knowledge of football in whole. And he's a really nice bloke as well. So why not? Be back hopefully Wednesday with a match preview ahead of our Friday night game against Cheltenham. Of course, myself and Ava and the gang will be at the Priestfield for another match day live the Friday before Christmas. But until then, I hope you've had a good weekend, and most importantly, up the Gills.